Hello there, everyone. I'm David Brock from the Computer History Museum, where I am the Director of Curatorial Affairs and also the Director of its Software History Center. I'm very sorry not to be able to be there in Paris to join in person with all of you, but I really hope to join you in a future meeting and to become even more a part of the important network that software heritage has built and is continuing to develop. What I'd like to do in the few moments I have to speak with you today is just to review some of the activities at the Computer History Museum in software preservation, access, and interpretation, especially source code, that I really see as complementary to the sort of work being done today by software heritage and contemplated by software heritage in the future. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Computer History Museum, we're based in Mountain View, California, and I just wanted to take a few moment to describe our collection to you. We have over 1 million items in the collection. The collection has, two aspects under one common roof, is sort of materials that would constitute what you would normally find in a museum collection, and materials that you would find normally in an archival collection. We have them together in one organization. And the sort of scope and focus of the collection is on the history of computing, broadly conceived. So we have objects that stretch back several centuries into the past and are collecting materials today in which computing is an enabling part, but maybe not the whole of the item or the system that we're collecting about. So the collection ranges across 3D objects, of course, to two-dimensional images and moving images. Our archival collections span manuscript collections of individuals, organizations, and projects, onto printed materials, ephemera, gray literature. We collect digital objects, both born digital objects of various different kinds of file types, and also digitized materials. And last but not least, we collect software in both executable software and source code, and we collect this quite literally on every type of media that has been devised across the history of computing. So I'd like to now turn to reviewing some of these complementary activities of which I spoke, which I believe complement the activities that software heritage is doing, and how these kind of link into various kind of existing activities of the museum and some new approaches that we've developed specifically for software history. So these are activities connected to objects in the collection, to oral histories that we make, to a new practice that we've engaged in, new to us practice, not to cultural anthropology, but new to us that we've engaged with for software history, for preservation and interpretation. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Related to our archival collecting, then touch a bit on the preservation and access partnerships that we're engaged with, and also talk about a special activity of ours, which is our work to make proprietary software that's had a big impact in the world, our work to make the source code for that publicly accessible for everyone to have a chance to study and to examine. So, so I'd like to talk a little bit about our activities related to object collecting. We have In our collection, we have, for example, preserved a large collection of punched paper tapes and magnetic tapes from the Whirlwind computer created at MIT in the 1950s, an extremely important and influential system. For quite a large number of years, we were really just engaged in the preservation of those materials. More recently, we've moved into the recovery of the data from these punched paper tapes through the work of the very careful work, I should say, of our software curator, Al Caso. And then in collaboration with the MIT Museum and a software engineer working with the MIT Museum named Guy Fedorkov, we've been in a kind of a partnership to work on the interpretation of these materials, of this early software. And that has been done by Guy Fedorkov developed a disassembler so he could, transform executable into source code for examination. A Guy also built an instruction set level simulator of the Whirlwind computer so he could actually run this historical software again. And that's led to a couple interesting several interesting avenues of investigation that Guy has been really pursuing, some with us. We recovered a program that caused the Whirlwind computer to play the tune of Jingle Bells, and we did a kind of examination of what was up with that. Guy was also able to recover and identify a program developed for Whirlwind in the 1950s to play video poker, of all things, and published a very nice study of that with us. Also relating to object collecting, it's not just the oldest things in our collection, it's also some of the most recently created things that we've added accession to our collection. Here's an example of a processor for a commercial quantum computer that we collected. And in collecting that, we also worked with the manufacturer of that computer to collect a kind of representative or sample software that would have that could run on this computer. And in this case, we asked them for software so that the quantum computer could solve the famous Bridges of Königsberg problem, which is famous from the history of mathematics and for graph theory and computer science. And so really both the object and the software kind of inform one another. And we've collected that for the long term. In addition, the Computer History Museum's Oral History program has over 1,100 mostly videotaped life and career oral histories in our collection. And these are from people from across the whole range of contributions to the story of computing, let's say. Oral history has also proven to be a great way for us to, a great entry point for us to get into collecting opportunities for historical source code in particular. And this example that I'm showing is a really great example of that. We conducted oral history interviews with Ivan Sutherland, a very prominent figure in the history of computing, and through that we're able to collect a photocopy, Ivan Sutherland's photocopy of the source code listings for his really revolutionary computer graphics program of 1963, Sketchpad. So we were able to bring that into the collection, to scan it, and to make it available through our online collection. Our online catalog, I should say, sorry. Another tack that we've taken with oral history is actually to use oral history as a method deliberately to get into the interpretation of source code. So in this case, we were collecting some of the earliest listings of some of the earliest programs created by the legendary software figure Don Knuth. And so what we did was use a kind of oral history approach to talk to Don Knuth about these programs and to have him help interpret and point out things of interest in these programs. And we did that by a sort of standard video oral history setup where we're filming Don, but we also had a camera above a table in which he was examining the software so we could see what he was talking about, what he was pointing to in the source code. A technique that we have engaged with, adopted from cultural anthropology for documenting cultural kind of performances and activities of all kinds, is video ethnography. In our case, we are looking at kind of this combination of sort of active computing in which you have, working software on working equipment with a knowledgeable working human actor who can make it all happen, to look at that combination of factors of running software on a working computer with a knowledgeable informant, looking at that as a kind of performance, and there's actually a very strong connection to this view with the historian of computing Michael Mahoney's view of the dynamic object of computing, of software running on hardware with a knowledgeable human operator. So we're looking at this video documentation of this kind of performance of software as both interpretive product and for long-term preservation. We are lucky enough to have access to all the right materials to do this for the Xerox Alto system. So I've done a number of video ethnographies in this line. This one pictured here with Dan Engels for the object-oriented system Smalltalk, programming language and environment. I should say that all these video ethnographies are on our YouTube channel at Computer History. Another video ethnography we did was with Larry Tesler and his kind of very important document processing system, word processor called Gypsy. And another with Doug Fairbairn of the program Icarus, which was an early computer-assisted design program, in this case for the creation of integrated circuits. For other video ethnographies we've done, such as this one, also from the Xerox PARC story, the system CEDAR, the programming environment CEDAR, we didn't have access to the original machine, so we were able to have access to the original software, but did the video ethnography using an emulator. Other examples that we've done are of multimedia software. This was a product news navigator, one of the first kind of multimedia software environments to have embedded digital video. And while many of the video ethnographies we have done have been with the creators of the software, we've also done video ethnographies with scholars of the software. In this case, we worked with Professor Andrew Lisson, who was doing a study of some very early multimedia systems. This was an example called the Visual Almanac, combined a computer and a Laserdisc player. And we conducted the video ethnography with the scholar. And it was very productive. I just have a few seconds left, I guess. In archival collecting, that's been a place where we found source code. So, for example, we were lucky enough to be entrusted with the papers of Dennis Ritchie, in which we found some of the earliest Unix source code, sort of version 0 for the PDP-7. We were able to identify that, get that digitized, and the Unix Heritage Society has done great things with it, but we've also made that available publicly. Other times we've gone after archival collections because they know they have source code in them. In this case, we have a great collection of materials from Dennis Austin, one of the people responsible for writing the source code for the earliest versions of PowerPoint. And we have that now in the collection. As we all know, software preservation, software history is such a big topic that we have to work in partnership with one another. We're very lucky to work with a volunteer curator named Paul McJones, who has created this wonderful resource called softwarepreservation.org, which the museum hosts, which has source code and documentation and all sorts of rich materials on a variety of programming languages and software projects. And we've also worked in partnership on the access side. So we worked with Dan Ingalls, who I mentioned, who worked on Smalltalk. He has created a resource called the Smalltalk Zoo, which we host, which allows people to have a direct experience with this historical software in emulation. And last but not least, I'll just end on, again, this work that we do to work to get the source code for proprietary software that's been important out there into the world. As you can see, our source code, and these are sort of multi-year projects to get this done. So we have, I think, a dozen things ranging from Mac Paint to the Apple II DOS, the Xerox Alto, Microsoft DOS, Photoshop, Eudora, Deluxe Paint, Smalltalk, Word for Windows. It's a kind of a really broad range, and I guess I'm just happy to say that we have 3 of these historical source code releases coming up in the next 6 months or so that we're very excited about, and I hope you will follow us at Computer History on all the social media channels as we make these things public. And again, thank you very much for having me, and I so look forward to joining you in person in the future. Thanks so much.